All right, we are back, everybody. This is the Big Ten show.
I was like, what are you waiting on? It's going.
I was waiting for it to tell me that we're live, man.
It said it was live.
That is the almost famous Adam Carricker. I am the much less famous Jeff Turn. This is the Big Ten show, where if you were watching on YouTube, you saw me staring into abyss as I thought that we were not live yet. So we're here. We're there. And by the way, Adam, I'm going to show you a T-shirt right now. Give me the likelihood of 1 to 10, 10 being it's a slam dunk, 1 being no shot in hell, that they end up in the Big Ten one day.
Okay, how far down the road is one day? Like how far down the road?
Within 10 years.
10 years? No. 20 years? Yes.
You think so? NDSU?
I think so. They got to go D1 first, which they are.
Can't they just go right to the Big Ten?
No, that's why I think in 10 years they join one of the however many conferences we have at that point, but non-Power 5, there's probably only going to be like 3 at that point in time. Non-Power 3 conferences, and then eventually if they keep kicking butt, which they've been doing as a non-FBS team anyways, then they can go Big Ten. Couple of things. Number one, I didn't know I had turquoise eyes with this shirt. It looks like it, but I'm wearing a V-neck.
I thought you were wearing scrubs, man. I thought you were wearing scrubs to start. Like you were doing some doctor work.
You know what I'm bringing up. Don't try to detract from what I'm about to bring up. We've talked about what a V-neck means. What does it mean, Jeff? Let's see if you ever listen to me.
It's laundry day.
It means I could have dressed up, but I chose not to. We've talked about this. I had a teammate in St. Louis, Jay Wade. He wore a V-neck every day. Finally, at the end of the season, we came in as rookies together. He was a DB from Tennessee. I go, dude, why do you wear a V-neck every day? He goes, it's because it's like I could have dressed up, but I chose not to. And that's just my style, bro. And I was like, all right, cool. I can rock with that too.
How often do you wear a V? I don't own one V-neck, by the way. 0.
Pretty much when I come on this show, that's about it.
That's it.
V-necks and collars. I don't wear them much else, but I like to look decent for the show, presentable as much as I can, anyway. So,
well, thanks for making this place look better than it should. I want to start with a topic that you and I were kicking around off the air one day, and I think it's an interesting concept because honestly, I'm going to take full credit for this if it comes to fruition one day. I've heard no one ever talk about this.
Okay.
And it obviously involves the Big Ten and the SEC probably first and foremost. And maybe if it's the Big 12 or the ACC that sticks around, I really think one day there will be no Pac-12. But when it comes to these super conferences and the ultimate goal for them is to make as much money as humanly possible on the backs of these athletes until someone tells them they have to do it differently. And with these super conferences forming, as we've seen the Big Ten adding so many more teams along with the SEC versus the other conferences who are still just sort of dwindling around. Do you think we get to a point where, as we've seen in college football, the 4-team college football playoff, now we're expanding that out? Do you think we ever get to a point where there's enough teams to where the TV money would be monumental enough and it would add, I don't know, we'll talk about the variables to this, but a college football playoff within the conferences to actually win the conference? So not just the 2 best teams play for the conference title, but a 4-team or an 8-team playoff when you have 24 or 36 teams in a conference, and then they battle it out to ultimately win the conference. And then along the way, some of those other teams get more wins on their resume. Is it something that will ever come to fruition?
So much like your North Dakota State question, I think we have to put a time limit on this because 20 years, 30 years down the road, who knows? So I'm going to say within the next 10 years. Can we frame it within that framework? Okay.
In the next decade, right? So
in the next decade.
2033.
So I sat down and I wrote this down. Okay. And we have talked about this particular thing previously on the show because I'm like, eventually there's going to be 2 big conferences, the Big Ten and SEC. And you said, no. And you made a great point. And I think you were right and I was wrong. You were like, no, the Big Ten.
What was that? What was that?
I don't know. If you didn't hear it the first time, I definitely ain't repeating. But I thought about it, and I'm like, dang, what I said earlier. And so for me, the Big Ten's only going to take so many teams because you got to be worth the money. Like Oregon might be worth the money, but not Oregon State. Okay, Washington, not Washington State. Stanford, not Cal. That type of deal. North Carolina, apparently not Duke, so to speak, because we know Big Ten's trying to woo Virginia, North Carolina, those other schools that I mentioned. So I think there's going to be 2 major conferences and then a 3rd major conference of all the teams that the SEC and the Big Ten don't want. And they just kind of come together as a conglomerate. And I think it's going to be the Big 12. I think the ACC is going to dissolve because I don't think you're going to get a Cal or a Utah to travel to the East Coast a ton, although USC, UCLA might have something to say about that. But my thought is the Big 12, because geographically they're in the middle. So all these, I don't want to call them reject teams, but teams that don't have a conference coming together, it's easier if they're in the Big 12. Okay. So I think that's the third conference. So looking at three, let's say 20-team conferences, as opposed to two 36-team conferences, because I do think three 20-team conferences is more likely because the Big 10, SEC, each school gets more money if they're pickier with who they bring in. So bear with me. All right. I made a lot of notes for this. Okay. Right. I took time to make notes. All right. Now, if I can read them, will be the whole other question. All right. Let's say the Big 10 has 20 teams. So my first thought, and we know they're getting rid of divisions, but just bear with me here. It's my thought process. Two 10-team divisions. Okay. So every team plays 9 division opponents. Those are your conference games every year. 3 non-conference games. There's your 12 regular season games. So the 2 division champions play each other in the conference game. So what you're proposing is more than 2 teams. You said all the way up to 8. I only went up to 4. So you could have the 2 top teams in each division play a division championship game. Then those teams play in the conference championship game. Or you could say there's no divisions, which is what I think you're proposing. And then the top 4 teams play at the end of that. And so those are what you're talking about. Okay. Initially, I was like, dude, this is a great idea. You're right. Nobody else has brought this up. But here's what occurred to me. The 12-team playoff. And this facade, this mirage of player safety that they don't really give a crap about, but they have to give the appearance of. So we talk about a 12-team playoff with a 12-team regular season plus a current conference championship game as it is now. You're talking 12 regular season games, a 13th championship game. And if you're a 5 through 12 seed, you're going to have to play 4 games to win the national title. That's 17 games. If you're a 1 through 4 with a bye, you still got to play 16 games. I love your idea. I'm not saying it won't happen in 20 years, 30 years. In 10 years, I think people are still going to have the mindset of getting used to playing that many games. And so they're not going to be on the bandwagon of, hey, let's have a playoff within the conferences too. What say you?
I would first of all say on the player safety part of it, I think we've come a long way in the last 10 to 15 years in understanding more about player safety, figuring out ways to make the equipment safer. And I think the NFL is a prime example of someone that lost billions of dollars in a lawsuit about concussions, but has expanded out their season, right? They added an additional wild card team. They figured out ways to implement more football and play on Thursdays, I mind you, on a short week without getting skewered by the PR police. So I know that's bigger, faster, stronger, and next level up. You're getting paid full salaries to go out there as your career. But I think they could be used as a litmus test to go, hey, they're playing more games, and the player safety aspect of this isn't as big of a concern. A decade from now, when I believe player safety will still be front and center, but still
Jeff, are you there?
continue to see as we move forward, at least, is depending on who's at the top of the conference and what their vision is as the commissioner, how much they can convince the school presidents that this is the right idea. So if you get an old school individual that is all about sort of the college model of the past, but is running a conference now and understands where we are as far as the landscape is concerned, maybe you don't get to a college playoff within the conferences. But, man, they're going to dangle a bunch of – if this catches wind from the networks, which, by the way, why wouldn't the executives at ESPN and Fox and CBS not be listening to the Big Ten show?
Tell me about it.
If they catch wind of this and there's some sort of conversation that starts to snowball, I wouldn't be shocked if this is something that's at least kicked around. And once you get to a certain number of teams, then it becomes a real conversation. I think we're a handful of years away from that, because I don't think maybe they do it with 4 teams once you get to 20. And again, if we just have 3 conferences of 20, we're not too far away from that in the Big Ten and the SEC. So, man, I just feel like there's so much money to be made from doing something like this. And you could work it into where you reduce one of your conference games and you make it like a flex schedule to where you have your last conference game against your conference foe, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State, whatever. And then there's like this flex week or two, right? And you don't know who you're playing until that final week is done. And all the teams that don't make the playoff, bam, you got 2 or 3 games you're playing the next 2 weeks. You make it, bam, you're playing in the playoff. Maybe it's just 1 week because, again, if you lose, you're done. I just feel like they could be flexible with the schedule and find a way to do this and make a bunch of money. And at the end of the year, I'm not one that likes the playoff anyways. I like the old BCS model. I want the 2 best teams that had the best regular season record to play for a championship because I think the regular season should matter. They've already told us that doesn't matter.
Yep.
The regular season doesn't mean anything anymore. It's how you do against certain teams and how you do at the end of the year more so, which is recency bias. I just feel like, man, there could be a play for this.
So first of all, a couple of things. You and I have never discussed whether we actually like the playoff system or not. That is a whole plethora of shows to itself. Let's discuss that one day. For now, let's table it. I think the biggest thing you have going for you in your argument, okay, is NIL. Because these are supposed to be student athletes, right? Let's be honest. We're getting away from that image and that mirage as well, which is really what it was. And if we start to see these athletes making hundreds of thousands or even potentially millions of dollars, they're going to view it, like you said, similarly to the NFL. Well, hey, you guys, this is what you do for a living. This is your profession. Shut up and go play football. Shut 100%. Up and dribble. And so I don't think we're there yet. I predict not in 10 years, 11 years, just so you're wrong, that this is when this takes place. I predict in year 11, this takes over. Okay, so that's my prediction. But you make a fair point, and I think NIL is your biggest supporter because the more money these athletes make, the less player safety is going to be important because they're going to be viewed more as professionals or semi-pros than they are college athletes and or amateurs.
All right, now let's get to another topic here as we truck along here on the Big Ten show. And I can't wait to come back to this, when we hear this December, there's 2 more teams coming to the Big Ten, and we're near that 20 mark. Because I feel like that's sort of the number where it makes more sense when we get to 20 and et cetera. But and I'm not going to give credit to this individual because I cannot remember the dude's name. But he has a great show. I watch it all the time about college football. I'm totally blanking on it, but we're going to steal it away. Way
to be a great journalist.
Dude, I've always claimed to be a gas bagger, not a journalist. All right. So
go ahead. I'll look it up. I got it. Go ahead.
You can find it. But I'm going to start with this. So the college football playoff, we have a national championship game after the playoff concludes. We get 2 teams playing for the Natty. Should we come up with one site where the national championship is always played? Now, if you think about this from an NFL perspective, they rotate the Super Bowl. If it's the NBA Finals, if it's the NHL Finals, if it's the MLB World Series, all of that.
Final Four.
Final Four's rotated. Home teams rotate throughout the World Series, the NHL Finals, and the NBA Finals. This would be unique, and college football has always been unique. It'd be more like golf, right, where the Masters is always played at Augusta. That's the only comp I could really think of where we always play that. The U.S. Open rotates, the PGA Championship rotates, the Open Championship across the pond rotates.
College World Series, men's and women's, is always
Omaha. There you go. Omaha and Oklahoma City. That'd be another comp.
Yep.
Should we have one site like Omaha? That's probably the best comp because it's college sports where you always play the national championship. What do you think of that idea? And the idea that came out was let's have it be at the Rose Bowl.
So again, bear with me with this. So it's Josh Pate. Okay, I hope I'm saying his last name right. P-A-T-E, and he's at Late Kick Josh on Twitter. Check him out. Okay, so I literally sent this screenshot to Jeff. I was like, we should talk about this too. So we're giving proper credit, and we are kind of journalists here. All right, with some sort of integrity. So here are my thoughts. I said, I'm just going to read what I wrote. Awesome. Initially love it for so many reasons. Ultimately, though, no. It creates disadvantages in favor of local schools. The difference between golf, which you brought up, and college sports is college sports are recruiting. Golf is not recruiting, okay? They're not recruiting to play at these certain sites or schools. You earn it by how you play throughout the year. USC, UCLA, you don't think they'd have a huge advantage being right next to the Rose Bowl?
No.
Why you don't think Oklahoma has a huge advantage with the Women's College World Series being right there every year, while 3 straight national titles and a 1,000-game win streak says otherwise?
No.
Okay. I don't know why Nebraska's not better at baseball. We'll get to that later. You can take shots at me later with that one. Okay. So here's what I wrote. All right, there's more money to be made when moving it around. People get excited going to different sites, going to different locations, as opposed to going to the same location every year. You know, baseball, college baseball doesn't get the same kind of hype as basketball and football. Part of me, I can't help but wonder, it's always the same location. It's not a like the major bowl games used to be orange, rose, sometimes sugar, cotton, and fiesta. I'm sorry, rose. I'm speaking intelligence. Sugar, orange, rose, and then the cotton and fiesta have kind of rotated which one's more important over the years. It was cotton, then fiesta took over. Now cotton's probably taken over a little bit again. My point is people want to go different locations. They want to go to different spots. Okay, but what was created by the major bowl games always being in the same spot is, I'll tell you right now, there were certain people who weren't always excited to go to the Orange Bowl every year from Nebraska. Or some people always going, Michigan, Ohio State going to the Rose Bowl. Once you've been there 3 out of 4 years, it's not as exciting. Okay, also it created recruiting disadvantages. Which schools tend to win those bowl games more? USC, Miami of Florida, Florida State, talking about the Orange Bowl. The schools that are closer to home tend to have more success. It's a home field advantage. It's a recruiting disadvantage. And I don't know that it's ginormous, but you can't say it doesn't exist. All right, let's see what else I got here. Here's what I got as well. Okay, first of all, I wish the playoffs were set up a little bit different, but the way it currently is, the first 4 playoff games, once we go to a 12-team playoff, will be at home college sites. Then the next 4 will be at the 4 major bowl game sites. So it's a neutral site, so to speak. I wish it was, until the national championship game, always at a college site, a college home field, so to speak, until the national title game. Kind of like the regular season for college football is always played on a home field until you get to the conference championship games. Okay. And so for me, it's not that way. So here's my thought. Let's preserve some of that same old school college nostalgia that has kind of been obliterated, but let's preserve it a little bit in the aspect of trying to preserve not just the rose, but the cotton, the fiesta, the sugar, or orange, whichever 4 you want to prioritize. Okay, because my thought was, imagine just blowing up the NCAA basketball tournament, just blowing it up and not preserving any sort of semblance of it. And so I wanted to preserve it. I wanted to create less of an imbalance. I wanted to create unique, more destinations. Now, for fans to go to, players to go to, I had a blast at the Alamo Bowl my redshirt freshman year. Blast. When we went my junior year, I was 40% as excited to go, even though we were playing a Michigan team that turned out to be probably one of the most exciting bowl games I've ever been a part of and or seen. So here's my thought. Okay. All right. Make the Rose Bowl the most intriguing. If you have these 4 major bowl game sites as your second round sites, not college home fields, which it should be, always make the Rose Bowl the most intriguing matchup of those 4. Whatever it is, just make it the most intriguing. Okay. And make the second round of playoffs eventually one day, if you want to, college home field sites, because if you did that, then I'd be much more open, because now, well, how do we preserve any sort of college football nostalgia at that point? Because if the second round is on college home fields, then I'd be much more likely, much more open to say, hey, let's keep it at the Rose Bowl more often, because at least we're preserving something, which would be the Rose Bowl. Right now, I feel like we can preserve more things until we get to the point, which I think we will one day, when all the playoff games are at college home sites, but we're not there yet.
Okay, I don't really buy too much that it's the home field advantage thing. I mean, maybe. I never played the game, so I don't know. Like, I always feel like, dude, does it matter that you get on a plane and go play somewhere? Like, this home field advantage thing, I think is for the birds. Okay, but I never played, so I don't know.
Can I just point out one thing before you go on? Yeah. Just real quick. Okay. Is that a yes or a no? You're just going to stare at me with your pen up your nose, or what?
That's a yes. It was.
Why do you really? So over the years, do you think the Pac-10/12 is a stronger conference than the Big Ten?
No.
Yet the Pac-10/12 has a win-loss advantage over the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl consistently. Why is that? And it's really not close over the years.
The reason is the top of the Pac-12, I always felt, has been more athletic and better athletes. So in a one-game scenario, I think they have an advantage against pound it out, wear you down Big Ten. I think over the course of a season, tougher to play in the Big Ten.
Are you aware of the national championship games, a one-game scenario? Did you know that?
One-game situation for USC or whoever. And I don't even know. You better look those stats up. That doesn't feel like it's as accurate as you're telling me about the Big Ten and the Pac-12. I don't know the record. Okay.
Right,
you look that up.
Go ahead.
So I'm gonna explain why I don't really care if it's at the Rose Bowl always or not. I just feel like, just like the Super Bowl, don't put it in a cold weather environment, okay? I thought the New York Super Bowl was stupid. Thought the Minneapolis Super Bowl was stupid, even though it was indoors. The fans don't get to experience it. It's about the experience of the fans as much as it is about the players sometimes. So I don't like the cold weather venues. I want nothing with weather affecting the game itself. So I just think New Orleans, Dallas, Arizona, California, and as much as I love South Beach, can get a little rainy, man. And unless there's a roof on it, I'm not a big fan of playing a national championship game where you could have torrential downpours. So that's my only complaint. Like, let's make it indoor stadiums in Dallas and New Orleans, indoor stadium in Arizona, and you could play it out in Pasadena. Rarely do you get bad weather in Southern California. So that would be my only complaint if we had to go multiple locations. But if you told me it was always going to be at the Rose Bowl, I would not be mad about that scenario. You have a record all time here.
I was not able to find it. I was hoping you would talk longer. You normally do. But I was not able to find it in that short amount of time. Here's what I know. I know the Pac-10 has the win-loss percentage record advantage over the Big Ten, and I know it's not close. It's 60. It's worse than 60-40 if I remember correctly. Normally you talk much longer. What happened?
I'm looking right now, man, because this is intriguing to me. All right, like game records. This is yeah.
I told you it goes game by game. It doesn't give you an overall. I did it at one point. I also did.
As of 2014, the Pac-12 holds a slight edge over the Big Ten with 33-30 wins, and that was 2014.
Well, okay. In my defense, I was in college when I looked this up, and the Pac-12 has sucked since I was in college. So
did you have to write the newspaper and have them write it back to you? I mean, there was no internet when you were in school, man. Don't lie to the people.
I'm not lying to the people. It was probably 1,000-9, and the Pac-12 has just sucked so much since then. It's gone to 30.
He had to write it in the newspaper and ask a question and wait till the next Sunday for them to print it out for him. That's how that came out.
So here's the deal. Not to backtrack too far in the conversation, but I'm going to backtrack a ways.
Okay.
Because I've always thought they should do this. Going back to college, the conference championship weekend, okay, because we got onto the Rose Bowl track, and I wanted to make this point, and I forgot. The number one team from the Big Ten East, number one team from the Big Ten West play every year, as we know. And eventually it's going to be the top two teams with no divisions. Even if you go top four teams, no divisions, however you want to do it. Right. That means if there's a 20-team Big Ten, there's 16 teams sitting there idle. And so when there was divisions, my thought was have the number two team from the Big Ten West play the two from the East, 3, 4, all the way down.
Final week of the year.
And the Big Ten did that once. They stole my idea once during the COVID season, and that was it. Why don't we do it every year? Why are they sitting at home on their butts? Now, I'm not ducking your Pac-12, Big Ten win-loss record, okay? I just wanted to go back to that. I brought it back up when I didn't have to. I had successfully maneuvered away from it. Okay. I stand by the fact that the weaker conference has the better overall win-loss record versus the stronger conference, in large part due to proximity, in large part due to whether they're familiar with, in large part due to it helps them recruiting their top-end teams and making them better. So I'm still right.
All right, man, I'm going to throw one more topic at you, okay? I know we got like a couple minutes left. So I'm going to have you take your pick, okay?
Okay.
This is a simple one. Who's going to have a better year? Cade McNamara, and this is transfer news, right? Big Ten quarterback transfer news. Cade McNamara going from Michigan to Iowa.
Okay.
Or Jeff Sims going from Georgia Tech to Nebraska.
Georgia Tech to Nebraska, Jeff Sims. I don't have high expectations for Cade going to Iowa. Anyone who has to play in the Iowa offense while Baby Ferentz is still in charge, sorry. I've called him Baby Ferentz for years on the Character Chronicles. I don't know if I ever have here, but I'm going to start doing it here. Until Baby Ferentz is no longer the OC, I don't get excited about anyone, unless you're a tight end, who plays offense at the University of Iowa. O-line and tight end, if you play any other position, good luck to you. That's not even Nebraska bias. That's just more, I don't believe in Baby Ferentz. Sorry.
I think this year the seat is hot, pressure's on. They have spent the all. You're going to see a totally revamped offense from Iowa this year.
They're going to put three tight ends out there, four tight ends.
It's going to be totally different. Spread it out. They're going to have, no back in the backfield, shotgun.
Dude, you're crazy.
Cade McNamara is going to be chucking it around.
They're going to have 8 offensive linemen and 3 backs with no quarterback. That's what they're going to run.
gonna look like they're playing in the spread. It's gonna look like an NFL offense. Baby Ferentz is gonna save his job. They're gonna score 28 points per game. It's gonna be
25.1.
It's gonna be Iowa's football at its finest. I'll take Cade McNamara over Sims. Hey, anything else you want to say quick before I kick you out of here?
One quick question. It's because you can't handle me. All right, one quick question. Serious question. Because there is a team that's been Iowa, but a little bit better on a more consistent basis. I don't say that disrespectfully. I say it factually. Wisconsin, who is legit trying to spread out their offense. My question for you, I think over time they'll be successful, but year one, will they be more successful year one in their new offense they're trying to implement than they've been recently in their heavy power run offense that they've had?
No, man, it's going to take a little bit of time. I just think I was listening to Luke Fickell on the Believe in the Badgers podcast the other day, and I just don't think he's putting a lot of pressure on year one to be a home run season. And I think that's good, because if it is, great. But if not, you give yourself that leeway that, hey, we're taking our time to be successful. So, no, man, I'm good with it taking time too, because I think Luke Fickell, wherever he's been, filling in there at TOSU or going to Cincinnati, I think he's done a really good job. So, yeah, it's going to take a little time.
How long will it take?
I think by year 3, they're looking like the offense he wants. And probably
do you think Baby Ferentz is still around in year 3?
Yes, I do. That's the Big Ten Show, as another page has turned here on the program. iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Check us out on all those places. Adam, be well till next time. We'll talk to you guys around the corner. Take care. There we go. Cool. It stopped on me. Nice.
So
oh, no, it's not. It's still going.